The entire lobby froze the instant Bennett Crawford, heir to one of the largest corporations in the country, pointed a finger at the receptionist and shouted, "You're fired." Loud enough for every floor to hear. Papers slipped from interns' hands, executives stood completely still, and Emery Quinn herself felt the ground vanish beneath her feet. All because of a mistake she didn't make. All to feed the bruised ego of an arrogant director who needed someone to humiliate. What no one knew was that in less than an hour, that very same man would be doing the unthinkable, begging her not to leave. But before we continue, hit the like button real quick to support the channel. It helps a lot to bring more stories like this. The lobby of Crawford Enterprises always looked like something out of a magazine: mirrored marble, lavish floral arrangements, warm golden lights reflecting off the glass like liquid gold. And at the center of that flawless scene stood Emery Quinn, the receptionist who held the entire company together without anyone noticing. She was the one who solved delays, confusion, visitors, access issues, deliveries. She was the one who knew everything, silence after silence. And that was why this morning would be even more cruel. At 8:58 a.m., 2 minutes before the important meeting with international investors, the registration system crashed. Again. An old bug, one Emery had reported many times but the board always ignored. She took a deep breath, opened the security access manually, and began writing down the names in an emergency spreadsheet exactly as she'd been instructed months earlier. But then, the executive elevator opened with a sharp, heavy ding. Out stepped Bennett Crawford, the new director, the spoiled, arrogant heir, freshly appointed after a sabbatical trip funded by his millionaire father. He walked fast, wearing an impatient expression, as if the whole world were running late, except him. His nose slightly raised, as if he breathed purer air than everyone else. He strode to the front desk with sharp steps, blazer perfect, impatience stamped across his face. "Miss Quinn, where are the registration records for the 9 o'clock meeting?" Emery lifted her eyes, trying to stay calm. "The system crashed again, sir. I'm recording everything manually." "Manually?" The word left his mouth like poison. Employees suddenly turned their heads. "Sir, this is the protocol your team." He slammed his hand on the counter. "Do you understand what it means to lose 2 minutes in a meeting of this level?" Behind him, the international investors were arriving, unable to understand the rapid English, but perfectly aware of the hostile tone. Emery swallowed hard. "I'm resolving the issue in the fastest way possible, sir." "If the system..." "So you're saying this is my fault?" His eyes gleamed with something dangerous. He looked at the executives around him, searching for an audience. "You're saying I can't manage my own building?" Emery shook her head, distressed. "No, sir. I just..." "Enough." Silence. The kind of silence that cuts through the air. Bennett stepped back, as if preparing for a final blow. "If you can't handle the most basic task in this company," he raised his voice so everyone could hear, "then you don't deserve to be here." Emery felt her stomach turn to ice. And then, right there in front of investors, employees, visitors, security guards, and interns. "Miss Quinn, you're fired." Even the investors, not understanding everything, exchanged uncomfortable glances. Emery stood frozen for a second. And in that second, her world collapsed. If I could just explain," she tried, her voice cracking. Bennett turned away, impatient. "Explain it to HR. Not to me." And he walked off. Without looking back. As if he had just thrown a pen on the floor, not a life. Slowly, Emery gathered her things with trembling hands. Every pen click, every note, every key felt as heavy as concrete. No one dared to help her. Not because they feared her, but because they feared him. And as Emery finally left the front desk behind, the lobby sank into a heavy silence. Everyone knew exactly what they had just witnessed. It wasn't a mistake, it was humiliation. Pure cruelty. A calculated abuse of power by Bennett Crawford. And as she walked toward the door, eyes glassy with tears, a question hung in the air. How could someone so competent be treated like that? What no one imagined was that this injustice was only the beginning of a story with a shockingly unexpected twist. If you've ever seen an injustice like this at work, comment "I've been through that." When the glass doors closed behind Emery, the world inside Crawford Enterprises seemed to stop. But outside, chaos had already begun, and it had everything to do with her absence. The first missed call came at the 10-minute mark. Then 3 more followed, each more urgent than the last. The building depended on her far more than anyone wanted to admit. Inside the lobby, however, the scene was different. Complaints piled up like forgotten papers on a messy desk. Susan Miller, the operations manager, rushed to the front counter. She was a practical, serious woman, but even she looked lost without Emery's calm presence. "Does anyone know how to access the visitor panel?" she asked, already knowing the answer. Silence. Nobody knew. Because Emery was the one who trained everyone, solved everything, and filled every gap alone. And Bennett Crawford had never noticed, or never cared enough to. The cruel irony? The very international client Bennett had used as an excuse to yell at her was stuck in the parking garage, with no authorization to enter. Susan narrowed her eyes in frustration. "This is ridiculous. Get Bennett down here." But Bennett was on the 17th floor, in the meeting room, convinced his display of authority had been brilliant. Until his phone vibrated. Several times. Notifications of system failures, blocked access, delays, and the investor's name flashing red, signaling growing irritation. "What's happening down there?" he demanded from his assistant. The young man swallowed hard. "Sir, it looks like no one knows where Miss Quinn kept the emergency protocols." It was in that moment that something almost imperceptible crossed Bennett's face. It wasn't guilt. It was discomfort. The first crack in the ego of a man who was used to never being wrong. Meanwhile, Emery was sitting on a bench outside, finally allowing a single tear to fall. She thought it would be just another difficult day. She had no idea her absence would bring an entire corporation to its knees. And that was just the beginning. The chaos that had only threatened the building finally reached its breaking point, and it hit hard. And at that exact moment, the building discovered an uncomfortable truth. No one there knew how to operate the reception system like Emery Quinn. The reputation of an entire corporate tower was about to crumble. In the lobby, manager Susan marched back and forth, one phone against her ear and another in her hand, trying to fix multiple problems at once. The tension was almost tangible. On the 17th floor, Bennett Crawford finally realized something was wrong, very wrong. He frowned. "Why isn't anyone fixing this?" he asked, irritated. Senior executive Marcus folded his arms. "Because Emery was the one who fixed it. And you fired her." A heavy silence filled the room. Bennett opened his mouth to reply, but nothing came out. His perfectly composed posture seemed to wobble for a moment. "Then call someone else," he muttered stubbornly. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Someone else? Who, exactly?" "Because Emery trained all of us, but no one knows the system like she does." Bennett felt a chill at the base of his neck. It wasn't guilt, not yet. But it was panic. The door swung open abruptly and Susan rushed in, flushed and breathless. "If someone doesn't authorize the investor right now, the $12 million partnership is gone." Everyone looked at Bennett. And for the first time since taking the position, he had no answer and no plan. The arrogance that once seemed so solid began to crack from within. And he finally understood. The entire building depended on the woman he had thrown out. And if he didn't do something immediately, he would lose far more than pride. Bennett Crawford had never run for anyone in his life. But that morning, He crossed the lobby of Crawford Enterprises almost tripping over his own steps, heart racing far too fast for someone used to controlling everything except himself. When the glass doors of the building slid open, he saw her. Emery Quinn, with her bag over her shoulder and the simple uniform he had insulted just hours earlier, was about to disappear into the crowd on the sidewalk. For a moment, Bennett hesitated. How do you speak to someone you destroyed in public? How do you ask for help from the person you treated as disposable? But he had no choice. He called her name, and the voice that came out didn't sound like his, not the arrogant, controlled, unreachable version everyone knew. It sounded human. Emery. She stopped slowly, as if afraid any word might hurt her even more. When she turned, she didn't find the untouchable director, but a pale, breathless, undone man. Bennett tried to speak, but nothing came out at first. He swallowed hard. I need you. The world seemed to hold its breath. Employees gathered near the doors, watching the scene with wide eyes. Susan, the manager, stood a few steps behind, wringing her hands. Even the irritated international investor watched from a distance. But Emery stood firm, not trembling, not shrinking. I didn't deserve what you did. The sentence wasn't spoken with anger, but with a truth so simple and so devastating that it struck Bennett like a blow. He lowered his head, for the first time in that entire building. The mask he had built for years fell to the floor along with his pride. I was unfair and arrogant. His voice came out unsteady. Please, let me fix this. The silence that followed was thick, almost tangible. Emery took a deep breath. She looked around and saw it all: desperate employees, frozen systems, delayed meetings, an entire company on the brink of collapse, a collapse she never intended to cause. And in that moment, the decision was no longer about Bennett. It was about everyone who depended on her. I'll help, she said with the serenity of someone who knows their own worth. But I'm doing this for the team. Not for you. Upon re-entering the building, Emery took only minutes to reorganize everything. She cleared blocked accesses, reactivated the system, and restored the order that several professionals couldn't manage to bring back. The entire lobby watched her with growing admiration. And Bennett. He stood in silence, feeling every second weigh on him like a painful reminder. He had fired the most competent person the building had ever had. When the chaos finally subsided and the building could breathe again, Emery was called to the main meeting room. Executives, managers, even employees who never stepped foot in that room were present. And Bennett Crawford was there too, standing in a corner, quiet, completely different from the man who had humiliated her hours earlier. The CEO began. Miss Quinn, what you did today saved this company. Emery kept a humble posture, but her eyes shone with contained emotion. Then came the announcement that left the room in complete silence. Your dismissal is cancelled. You will receive a raise. And we'd like to promote you to Corporate Service Coordinator. Some people smiled. Others sighed in relief. But no one reacted more than Bennett. He took a step forward, visibly affected. I was wrong about you. His voice didn't shake, but his posture did. And I need to learn from you what respect truly means. Emery took a deep breath. And she smiled, not in triumph, but in maturity. The smile of someone who knows that real worth never depends on the opinion of those who try to diminish it. The entire room erupted in applause. For the first time, it wasn't for an executive, a contract, or a new milestone. It was for her. And as Emery left the room, a truth echoed like a simple, eternal lesson. That day taught everyone something they would never forget. The power was never in Bennett Crawford's hands, it had always been in hers. And when the truth comes to light, no title, no money, no last name can hide it. Because those who step on others eventually learn, in the most painful way, that the world turns and every turn demands its price.